This is the Ag Engineering Podcast that rolls right into the details on tools, tips, and techniques that improve you, your farm, and our world. I'm your host, Andy Chamberlain from the University of Vermont Extension, and this podcast is sponsored by Northeast SARE. Thanks for listening. Yes, you read that right. The Ag Engineering Podcast, as you know it, is coming to an end. This project was generously supported by a Northeast SARE grant, which carried the project from launch in December of 2019 to July of 2022. The Northeast Sustainable Agriculture Research and Education Program, also known as SARE, offers grants and education to farmers, educators, service providers, researchers, and others to address key issues affecting the sustainability of agriculture throughout our region. This program serves Connecticut, Delaware, Massachusetts, Maryland, Maine, New Hampshire, New Jersey, New York, Pennsylvania, Rhode Island, Vermont, West Virginia, and Washington, D.C. This program is administered by the Northeast SARE's host institution, the University of Vermont. Northeast SARE is one of 4 regional SARE programs funded by the USDA National Institute of Food and Agriculture. SARE's nationwide mission is to advance the whole American agriculture. Innovations that improve profitability, stewardship, and quality of life by investing in groundbreaking research and education. I thank SARE for the support and recommend pursuing their many grant opportunities that they offer. Personally, I like a behind-the-scenes look at how things work, and I don't see a reason not to share the metrics of this show. There have been 76 episodes published, which have accumulated over 26,000 downloads. Listenership spans all over the world, but 93% of the audience is within North America. There's no great way to measure the number of subscribers across all the different podcast apps that are out there, but the hosting service that I use estimates that there's an average of 286 regular listeners. Additionally, there has been 5,000 users visit the podcast website. That's huge. So thank you for listening and checking out the additional photos and videos shared from these farm visits. The most popular episodes gained over 500 downloads each. The most popular episodes were also the first, second, and third to be published, covering the topics of caterpillar tunnels, managing multiple sales channels, and forming habits to create a sustainable farm. Thanks to Taylor and Jake Mendel for kicking off the show. New listeners are still checking out this content today. Compost Mulching on the No-Till Market Farm, episode number 47 with Patrick Sullivan of Ananda Gardens, also made the top 5. All episodes will remain in the existing podcast feed, but the audio will also be uploaded to the UVM Extension Ag Engineering YouTube channel for ease of access and archival purposes. I'm going to be scheduling these to trickle out on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays over the next 6 months. That's between October 2022 and March 2023. So if you want to catch up on previous episodes or you're just tuning in, subscribe to our YouTube channel and you'll get them right on your homepage. A few listeners were generous enough to provide some great reviews of the show. The first one from Monica Ponce of Love is Love Farm. She shares, "It stays relevant, like we were discussing tractors and then the podcast discusses tractors." The next reviewer says, "This podcast is a great resource for farmers growing between 1 and 100 acres. They're packed with information on specific tools. If you're planning and expanding your operation or investing in new equipment or systems, there is probably a few episodes that will help you make a better decision." So thanks, Russ T801, for posting that review. It's nice to have some podcasts in the arsenal that are not always news related. It's comforting. I gain a lot of positivity from listening, if that makes sense. It's just so nice to hear from other farmers talk, hear stories, and know that they're struggling with similar things. Thanks, Kesa Gerald of Green Wagon Farm, for sharing your review. Ollie Coltrera shares, "I've been listening to the podcast pretty regularly during walks and breaks since starting my job in July 2020. It's been a great way for me to get to know the Vermont produce landscape, especially during COVID when opportunities to visit farms has been limited. It's been a great introduction to a variety of farms, farmers, practices, equipment, and more that I was previously unfamiliar with. Thank you. Sometimes an episode causes a ripple effect. I have a feeling this is not the only time this has happened, but here's one example of what I'm talking about. After sharing the podcast episode about a flail mower and its use at Heron Pond Farm with Andre Cantelmo, my grandpa, Paul Chamberlain, ordered a flail mower for use on our farm. Then, Mark Fashing of Jericho Settlers Farm heard about our new purchase, visited to check it out, and proceeded to order one for himself, also after hearing about it on the podcast. I am sure Trevor Hardy from Brookdale Farm Supplies, who we all purchased this from, is grateful for our networking. Regular listeners of the show will have noticed a slight shift in the last few interviews from the short, topic-centered episodes to a little bit longer interview that shares more of the farm's story. Oftentimes I broke these up. The average duration of all episodes was about 23 and a half minutes. And it's been an evolution of farm visits, interviews, and editing them down to find the ideal way to share these stories. When planning the next chapter of the podcast, I interviewed a few of the key partner farmers who helped to get the show started to begin with and to get their input on what they liked and what they got out of it. This is Gabby and Henry of Old Road Farm.
I like the equipment side of things. I like learning what other people are using and what equipment they've got and how it works for them. So I think that's a valuable little niche you've carved out for this podcast.
I really like knowing about how farmers got started and where they are now. I think that's really valuable for especially beginning farmers, people that want to, get into farming or, want to expand their farm. I think seeing what other farms are doing and how they got started, and I think that's great.
I mean, I love hearing about what other farms are doing and different stuff and techniques. Obviously, it's real into it.
Like for me, it's really like whatever kind of whales that you can harpoon. Like the really strong farmers. It's always in the farmers who have been at it for a while, have strong business models. I know it's like a challenge to track down those types of farmers, but that's really who I want to hear from. And then, talking about the equipment and production practices is super interesting. And that is kind of like off the cuff advice that you get. Like when they would just look at a piece of equipment or a crop or something and then mention, a couple things. Like those are the kind of gems that you wouldn't necessarily be able to just script in. And so, that kind of flow is good. With those types of farms, that's what the most interesting thing is. These are people who are really well established. They have established markets. They've been in business for a long time. So, everybody knows what they say is reputable.
That was Phoenix O'Brien of Holbrook Farm and Silas Doyle Burr of Last Resort. Next, we hear from Eli of Honeyfield Farm.
I do really like, especially when I'm like out on the tractor for like several hours doing something. I really do like listening to podcasts. Like I really like the ag engineering one. And I love like Howard Prestick's like talking about like if you take care of your tools, it'll last forever. And I'm like, as I'm just like watching my tools just like rust into the ground because I just have no capacity to do any sort of maintenance.
Yeah.
But I'm like, one day, my second set of everything, I'll keep better. The first set is just the burner.
When I was interviewing Harrison Bardwell of Bardwell Farm, I realized that he has been a listener since the beginning of the show, and he's a big fan. So I asked him all kinds of questions to get a little bit more insight from a listener's standpoint.
The thing I like about yours is that you give a lot of information, so I like to be able to focus and listen and take notes actually on them. I've actually learned and connected with a couple of farms that have been on your podcast of the different implements or things you've talked about, which really has helped me educate things and learn something new. Um, like the farm with the high tunnels and the stone barrier up in Vermont, I think.
Yeah. Old Road Farm,
Old Road, and
Gabby and Henry.
yeah, and the other guy you did that basically equipment walk around. I'm forgetting his name. I think he was,
Probably Andre Cantelmo.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I love those. So it was cool to just seeing what other people have out there and what they use and how they use it is cool. But getting those I'll just call them farmer to farmer talks, or like
Yep.
hearing it from another farmer, just like that opens you up to a whole new mindset and listening and learning and seeing how someone else thinks, how it works for them, kind of thing. So I feel like when I first met you guys, and maybe I just didn't know you as well, is like you were more like geared towards, I feel like, pack house stuff or like engineering projects specifically, and now I feel like you're broadening your spectrum of like what you're talking about and what you're viewing. I could be slightly wrong, but um touching on multiple different parts in the ag industry or like on a farm in general, I think, whether even if they're just key things like like planting, that's like huge, or like crop maintenance of certain things. Um, I'm a mechanic geek. I or machine geek. I love any type of machine for the farms, that anywhere from you know no-till equipment to like pack house stuff. So, um, I think giving that broad spectrum of different things, don't talk about the same thing again. If I went on a walk, when I had COVID, like I had to get out of the house, so I just went on a walk in the middle of the fields, and I think I listened to like 3 of those podcasts in a row. And actually, now that you bring that up, like that was a different perspective, I feel like, than podcasts you had done in the past, or I feel like that was
Mhm.
something newer that you did, which was interesting to see, get an actual viewpoint of another farm, and just like their day to day, where they started, where they are now, why they are who they are. So, um, I definitely enjoyed that as well. 'Cause I feel like I know the farms in this valley pretty well, but there's so many farms in Vermont and New Hampshire, and that are just like us down here. But I don't know them, don't know who they are, don't know what they do, and um, so I think that's cool to learn different people and their businesses and how they operate them. Um, I tell everyone, I said every farm does something different, even if it's the same thing, it's done slightly different. So that's what I don't know. You can learn a lot from that, is what I'm getting at. So
Yeah. Based on this feedback and much time thinking about what works for me as the producer, in order to keep this podcast a sustainable project, I've decided to rebrand and shift the focus and format a bit. The Ag Engineering Podcast shared tools, tips, and techniques that improve you, your farm, and our world. It was technical and specific, and most episodes were about 20 minutes long. Going forward, the show will branch wider, not just about tools, but the methods and the lifestyle choices that were made across the farm to pull it all together. Conversations will include the farmer's story and how they got growing and how they're running their business for success. It will be a behind-the-scenes podcast where we visit with farmers and learn what it takes to be a sustainable produce grower across the triple bottom line of sustainability, balancing the impact on people, profits, and our planet. These recordings will be dynamic and naturally flowing as they're recorded in person, face-to-face, or in some cases on a side-by-side. You can expect these episodes to come out on a monthly basis and will be anywhere between an hour or 2 in duration. So, how do you listen to the new podcast? Well, if you're already subscribed, no changes needed. You'll just notice a different album art, different photo pop up on your feed. Don't be confused, just click on it and check it out. Launching in October will be the first episode visiting with John Cohen of Deep Meadow Farm in Ascutney, Vermont. We walk and talk on his farm and see high tunnels and field crops on his 50-acre farm. He shares about his Wizard vacuum seeder and explains his startup story about how he got into farming as a second career, and then reflects on what his next chapter will be as he thinks about retirement. Thank you for listening to the Ag Engineering Podcast, and I hope you like the new show. It's called The Farmer's Share.